Hello everybody, and welcome to another review. This is going to be a little bit more old school than my more recent reviews, and I'd like to talk about the Aune S7 balanced headphone amplifier. Now this is a company from China, and I've reviewed two of their products in the past, the Aune S6, which is a DAC and headphone amplifier combo, and then their Aune M1S, which is a digital audio player, and now it's this. This is just purely a headphone amplifier. There is no DAC components. So if you want to use this with your setup, you can only use it for the headphone amplifier, get a DAC separately and all that. So let's go over the front panel. First of all, as you can see, like I said, it is a headphone amplifier which has balanced output. Now the first thing you see, this is the one I've been primarily using, is the balanced 4-pin output on the far left of the panel. And then next to it, which I haven't had the chance to use myself, you have the balanced 3-pin XLR outputs. I haven't been able to use these myself. I wish I could, but I have not. And then you have a single-ended 1/4-inch output. But more on that later. There's something about this which I don't quite like, but I'll get to that later. Alright, now over here you have just one select button, and you have two input, and you have input switch, and you have a gain switch. Now to switch between the two, basically when this is on, this will be green or red. There'll be two colors that indicate what exactly you are switched to. So if you want to switch from the balanced input to the single-ended input, it'll be one of the two, green or red. To switch between the two, you double click on the select button. Double click on this and it switches the input. And if you want to turn gain on or off, you hold it down and it switches. So basically both of these things are controlled by the select button. And then of course you have a very satisfying analog volume knob. And that is the front panel. On the bottom you have some rubber feet just to be sure. And then on the back you have, now this is something very interesting which I saw them do with the S6. They have the lettering on the bottom and on the top, so in case you're looking over it like you usually will be, you can see clearly what's being labeled. So you have the balanced input right here, and in the middle you have one set of single-ended inputs. So one set of single-ended inputs and one set of balanced inputs. Made in China, some caution stuff, the on-off switch, and then the power cable input. And that is pretty much it when it comes to the outside features of the amplifier. In fact, I'm just going to let it rest here because it's quite heavy. I don't want to keep holding it. Alright, so the sound of the S7. The sound of the S7, I could characterize it as somewhere between the liquid carbon and my old shit Asgard 2. And the difference is that this doesn't have quite the syrupy nature of the liquid carbon, but it does have some of the warm characteristics of the Asgard 2 and a little bit of the haziness in the upper mids, which I remember from that amplifier. This does share that. In fact, this amplifier has been a bit of an interesting thing to gauge because with high impedance headphones it does very well. Very well. Of course, all my 4 headphones that I'm going to show you today, this drives them all properly, but it only is able to be paired with 3 of them in my opinion. Much like an OTL tube amplifier, when I plug in something which is low impedance into this headphone amplifier, something strange happens with it. It doesn't quite sound as neat, doesn't quite sound as clear as it should. Whereas things like my HD800 sound just fine. 300 ohm headphones, they sound just fine. But low impedance headphones into this, there is a bit of a strange pairing going on there. I'm not sure why. I've tried looking at the specs online. There's nothing on there that makes me think that this might be something where the total harmonic distortion or something is out of whack for low impedance headphones, but that's just how it is. So let's start with how you should be using this amplifier. Please don't use this amplifier in single-ended mode, because I can tell you right now, the single-ended mode on this, you know how some amplifiers have it tacked on, and you really don't feel satisfied with the quality of the single-ended output compared to the balanced output, because you're like, yeah, basically I'm buying a balanced amplifier, but just for the sake of some people, they tacked on a single-ended output. This is a lot like that, except it's even worse in that regard, because the single-ended output on this is so weak, so enormously weak compared to the balanced outputs, that it was hard to even drive my VE Zen on this. It was that strange. I couldn't quite believe it. And another thing, in all the outputs, in balanced and single-ended, you will need to use this on high gain. The reason for this is because the difference in volume between the high gain and the supposed low gain or gain off, I'm not sure, it doesn't tell you exactly. The difference between the two is immense. So please do not, if you're listening to something on this amplifier, do not suddenly switch to high gain in the middle of a song. You will blow out your eardrums because there is such a huge discrepancy between the volume you've been listening to on low gain and the volume you're going to reach on high gain. So keep this on high gain like I have been doing. If you want to experiment with low gain, do so. I've tried it just in case somebody asks me, what about low impedance headphones? Do they work well on low gain? They work slightly better, but there's still a bit of problems. I'm going to get to that in a second. So this amplifier is, for me, a amplifier for high impedance headphones, or IEMs, or earbuds, or whatever you want to use this with. So, and you will have noticed this can't be used as a preamplifier. As we saw in the back, there's no preamp thing for this. This is purely a headphone amplifier. Alright, through the balanced output, the first candidate to talk about today will be the HD800. Now the HD800 is a headphone which is quite hard for me to pair with many amplifiers because I feel it doesn't give me the right amount of cushioning in the top end. I know some people might say, but Aornic, you have an SDR model, why do you need more cushioning than that? Well, I just do. I'm very sensitive to the 6K treble peak, and I would really appreciate a headphone amplifier which does that for me. And the liquid carbon does that for me. This also does that for me, but in a manner which is not quite as syrupy, not quite as thick as the liquid carbon. This is not as thick of an amplifier as the liquid carbon in terms of its sound characteristic. It's not as warm as the liquid carbon. It still has a slight warmth to it, which I would actually compare it to my Asgard 2, but not quite the thickness of the liquid carbon. So with the HD800, I can get by quite fine using this, unlike using, for example, the AGD Audio GD NFB28 amplifier with the HD800. It just hurts my ears compared to this. This I find quite clean in comparison. Clean and still a bit of warmth. So the HD800 I find quite nicely to be paired with this. There is no bass boost or anything like that. There's nothing crazy like the Pro Eikon, but it's a pleasant staging, pleasant pairing, not too shrill in my opinion. In fact, let's speak quickly about staging, sorry. The staging of this amplifier is interesting because it actually seems to me that there's something going on with the crosstalk capabilities of it, like whatever they've tuned it to, which actually feels like it has a wider soundstage than my other two amplifiers, slightly. So if I'm listening to something on this amplifier compared to the other two, I do hear a bit more separation in everything, in the instrumental primarily. It doesn't feel like it's made thinner or unsatisfying by comparison, but it is something that they've done. Left channel feels slightly more to the left, right channel feels slightly more to the right, and so on. So this amplifier does have that capability tuned into it. So here's a problematic pairing right now. The Focal Elear 80 ohm headphones, which are very sensitive. Honestly, I could drive this off of my portable music player if I wanted to. This is a problematic pairing for the Aune S6, and the reason for that is because this has so much haziness in it when you plug it into the Aune S6. There's something strange going on. It does not feel as clear, does not feel as satisfying. The punchiness and the dynamics are still there, but it feels very, very bogged down by whatever is going on with the Aune S7. So this is I would not recommend this pairing, and by this extension I would not recommend the pairing of any low impedance headphones, no sensitive headphones, into the Aune S7, because I feel like they're just not a good pairing. Too bogged down, too hazy. Like that haze I'm talking about, I'm pretty sure that's what I honestly like a little bit with my HD800, but with my Focal Elear, it's just not good, man. Not good. Moving on to another 300 ohm headphone. This is the ZMF Eikon. Now this headphone is also, like I said, 300 ohms. It's quite sensitive though, more sensitive than the HD800. But this is a decent pairing with the Aune S7. If I plug this into the Aune S7, I don't feel like I'm lacking any clarity in the mid-range. I don't feel like I'm lacking any of the sizzle in the treble. What I do feel like I'm lacking though is a bit of the control in the bass, which I do believe the Audio GD NFB28 does provide me more control in the bass compared to the Aune S7. Now the Aune S7, I've looked at their specs. It's a decently powered amplifier, has decent wattage, but it's not the insane amount that the NFB28 has, and so I feel like there's something lacking in the bass control in this compared to the NFB28. And then continuing on, let's talk about its younger brother, the ZMF Atticus. Now this is a very mid-bassy headphone. This is a headphone which is also something I need to be careful with what I pair, because this headphone has the capability to become too warm on some things, like my liquid carbon. With this amplifier, it doesn't feel too warm, but I do feel like there's some slight haziness in the upper mids, once again, because of the warmth of this headphone. But also I do feel that the bass, once again, which is, like I said, a very mid-bassy headphone, is not well controlled. It comes a little bit, it's all over the place. I don't feel like this is the best pairing for this amplifier, once again. So, with all these four headphones, I can easily say the best pairing would be, in my opinion, the HD800, then the ZMF Eikon, then the Atticus, and then the Elear, which I would recommend you don't ever even put near this amplifier. So overall, as an amplifier, what do I think about this? I think if you're going to use this, you must absolutely not use it in single-ended mode. I would have rather they not even put this there, so it didn't confuse people, like you can use this in that way. No way, don't bother doing that. If you want a single-ended amplifier, look elsewhere. This is a balanced amplifier. What do I think about the balance output? It's pretty good, but you have to keep it on high gain, and you have to keep, you absolutely have to keep it on high gain. Forget about the gain switch after you put it on high gain. Don't try to switch between them. Like I said, it might blow out your eardrums because of how much the difference is between the two volumes. You need to pair this with high impedance headphones, kind of like a tube amp, which is a bit strange because this is a solid state amplifier, but it does have a bit of the tubey, little bit of the warmth and upper mid haze that I believe some tube amps. It has more sound stages than my other amplifiers, which is interesting because I've heard that is a characteristic of some tubes. But like I said, not a tube amplifier, a solid state amplifier, and for the price, I do believe you could pick this up. But if you want a lot of wattage, if you have really high impedance headphones which are not that sensitive, if you need more power, I do believe the Audio GD NFB28 does provide you more. But you have to understand that is a DAC amp combo, first of all. I mean, I've been using it just an amplifier, so it's not that big of a deal, but that is quite a bit more in price than this. I believe this, if I am not mistaken, is priced around $500. So $500 for me in the UK could be a bit more because, you know, import charges and all that, but I must admit it's a bit of a handsome amplifier. Like right now you might see in the slide, it doesn't look so much because it might seem a little dusty. There's something interesting about the finish here, because if I scratch it, it leaves a mark, but if I buff it out, it's just gone. So that's the kind of finish it has. It's supposed to be stacked with the Aune S6. It's a very awkward stack in my opinion. I believe, like, unlike the shit stack, which is very, very clean in how it stacks, this looks a little strange. But it's supposed to be stacked, it's supposed to be paired with that. I personally did not like the pairing because I believe the Aune S6 has a bit of a the AK4495 that it has is a bit too thick in my opinion to be paired into this. And by thick I mean it's a bit too warm, so when I put it into this, it's a little unsatisfying with what headphones I use with it. and I do believe that I would much prefer using this with something like my Shitgungner multi-bit, which I have been using it with since I sent that out. So this amplifier is, would I recommend it to anybody? If you are looking for something with these outputs, these two are especially outputs, because the NB28 does not have these. It only has this, and it only has a single ended. It does not have these two, the 3-pin XLRs. If you really want something with 3-pin XLRs and you're willing to go out and try it out and see if it fits your character, what you like in sound, then by all means go for this. But if you are looking for just a pure solid state amplifier, which is a little bit less colored in the sound, like once again, this is not as colored as my Quad Liquid Carbon, it's not as syrupy as that, but it does have some characteristics. But I would actually say this is not a neutral amplifier for that reason. If you want something like that, then yes, you can go ahead and look elsewhere, I would say, because this amplifier does have its drawbacks like I've detailed. So that's been my review of the Aune S7, and I will see you next time, where I think I will be reviewing my Atticus or maybe something else. We'll see. So that's been my review. Cheers.